You bring up Georgia, and I mean, Trump's own advisors were on television saying, "Sir, we urge you not to announce any potential run for the presidency until after December 6th. Trump has flouted that entirely. He threw that advice out the window. If the Republicans lose, if Herschel Walker loses Georgia and Raphael Warnock is reelected and the Democrats increase their majority in the upper chamber, do you think Trump pays any price for that? I mean, or is that just further confirmation that, oh, yeah, this guy is a drag on our party, but does it do anything?
Well, I think it's further confirmation because the control of the Senate is not now hinging on that race. It won't be quite the same thing as it would have been had it been the decider, right? If there was a one race that was going to tell us who was going to be the majority, it would definitely come back on former President Trump. But remember, he did this, of course, 2 years ago when he basically, punted, as far as a lot of Republicans are concerned, the two races in the special runoff in Georgia that did, in fact, shift control from the Republicans to the Democrats. And he couldn't have cared less. What he cared about only was his own grievance, his own race, and his own claims that something bad had happened when, in fact, of course, it didn't. He is not a party man. He was never a party man. Remember, he switched parties 5 or 6 times over the years. He has no great loyalty to the Republican Party. He demands loyalty from the Republican Party. So it doesn't matter to him that there's a special election coming up in Georgia. He wants entirely to change the subject to his own case, his own race, and what happens to him next.
I mean, I think it's worth noting, Peter, that as we talk, or as Republicans talk about Trump's potential ouster from the party, which may not come to pass, right? The reason they're even debating this has nothing to do with principle and everything to do with political expediency. This is about winning. I mean, Jelani Cobb in the New Yorker points out, and it bears reading this quote, Trump did not single-handedly inject the strains of intolerance, racism, nativism, belligerence, and a durable sympathy for anti-democratic behavior into the Republican Party. And there is no reason to believe that his absence would cause them to evaporate. I mean, part of the reason it feels like Republicans are wringing their hands and don't know what to do about Trump is because the party is Trump. There is no effective daylight in terms of the policies and the rhetoric of the GOP and that of Trump and Trumpism. So if you excise Trump and Trumpism, what does that leave you with in terms of an actual governing platform for the Republican Party beyond the nativism, beyond the xenophobia, beyond the racism? It's hard to know how they would even begin to have that conversation. Do you get a sense that they're aware of that?
I think a lot of Republicans are aware that a lot of Republicans believe the party needs to rebuild itself after Trump, but they don't know when after Trump is going to be. And as long as Trump is on the stage, there is no such thing as an after Trump, right? They were not willing to break with him, it turns out, on January 7th, 2021, despite the attack on the Capitol, despite his own, lies about the election that led to that attack on the Capitol. If they're not willing to abandon him, then what's going to make them abandon him? Well, you're right. I mean, I think that when he becomes an albatross, when they see him as a loser, not a winner, when they see him, causing them more harm than good, that's the only moment when you can see Republicans beginning to drift away. The question is whether enough Republicans do. He still has an awful lot of support among the base, and a lot of Republican office holders and political figures are nervous about doing anything to aggravate him because they don't want to aggravate that base. I remember interviewing once a Republican senator who did not like Donald Trump, not Donald Trump's kind of Republican. I said, well, why is it you don't say anything? Why are you quiet? He said, because they did a poll in my state, and there are 88% of my Republican constituents in my state support Donald Trump. And that's more than support me. And that's always been the case. If that changes, if they perceive that the base is drifting away from Donald Trump, that's when they will begin to drift away themselves.
And that is an open question. I mean, you wrote in your, analysis of what's happening here, I think a very relevant point, which is there's the Republican Party of it all, and then there's the Trump of it all. Does it work? Does the carnival barking work for the third time? And I'll read the quote. It may be instructive to remember that Trump somehow kept hosting that show of his, The Apprentice, on air for 14 years, replaying essentially the same storyline over and over again as the audience kept coming back for more. So when he takes the microphone at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, which he's doing right now, for his special announcement, Trump is determined to script another season of conflict and drama in the hopes of being renewed. I mean, listen, we're rebooting a lot of old content as a society, as a television culture. But you do wonder whether you can repeat the same hate-filled rhetoric, the dearth of actual solutions, the divisiveness, the exhaustion the sort of moral exhaustion, the physical exhaustion, I speak for all of us. One wonders whether there's really traction for that in the year 2023 and 2024.
That's the real question. You're right about that. Politics, at least in the modern era, has a certain half-life, right? After a certain amount of time, trends tend to burn themselves out. And the audience, that is, the voters, the electorate, begin looking for something new, something fresh. And I think that's what you're seeing in some of these early polls suggesting a boom for DeSantis within the Republican Party. A sense among a lot of Republicans that, yeah, they still like Trump. They agree with him. They like his policies. They think he did a good job even. But they're realizing that that there's a diminishing factor here, that, in fact, they're a little tired of him. There's a fatigue setting in. And maybe it's time to try a new generation. And I think that's the biggest danger for him. There's not going to be sort of a sudden snap where Republicans say, we're done with you, go away. We can't stomach you anymore. It will be a slow corrosion of support among people who say, yeah, it's time to move on. Now, when that happens, I don't know. That's a big question. That's the big question looming for 2024. Does it happen in time for 2024, or does he manage to keep this show on the air long past, you would think, the storyline had kind of worn itself out?
That is the question. Declining audience and an ultimate cancellation of the Trump show? Time will tell. New York Times Chief White House Correspondent Peter Baker, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for your time tonight.